Hey there, my name is Eric Barthold, and I am a facilitator for my program called Man Up and Open Up. I'll begin today, let me make sure I'm doing this right. There we go. I'll begin today where I believe every conversation about sexual violence, especially in college, should begin, with an exploration of today's concept of masculinity. See, when I travel around and talk with guys and ask, what does it mean to be a real man? The answers are always the same, whether they're in 7th grade or seniors in high school. Real men are strong, they're athletic, they're powerful, they drive trucks, they drink beer, and yes, even 7th graders tell me real men have sex with hot women. So then if I ask, okay, what are characteristics of guys who don't live up to that standard? Again, I hear emotional, sensitive, weak. They care too much about things. They drive Priuses and wear skinny jeans. That's always in there for some reason. I don't but so then finally if I ask, what do we call guys who exhibit those latter characteristics? We always hear gay, pussy, bitch, homo, fag, all those terrible words that we all hate to hear. So just by asking this simple question of, like, what does it mean to be a man and a real man, we already get this gaping separation between the us, the guys, and those who we see outside of that, who we see as other, and also lower than the guys. You know, what does it say when the two worst things a guy can call another guy are either a woman or gay? What does it tell us about how we see those two groups of people? So defining the real man also shows us the constant pressure that guys are under to be seen as quote unquote manly, and the massive amount of anxiety that they feel as a result. So if I'm in college, I wear my Old Spice deodorant, I hang out with my male friends, and I'm popular with the ladies, I'm good. But then as soon as I become a little bit overly emotional or sensitive, or I care too much about something other than sports, all of a sudden it's, oh, stop being such a pussy. And we're pushed right back into this box of masculinity. And boys are constantly having to prove that they're in this space from a very early age. Everything from avoiding any toy that could be seen as girly to choosing theater over sports, to the cyberbullying that we see where guys will display a false sense of being powerful and controlling at the expense of another. And boys who play sports are particularly inundated by these pressures because being athletic is so central to being part of that box. And I'm making sure, oh yeah. So the contents, the problem is not for me the contents of the red in there, because many of the characteristics of a quote unquote real man are not inherently bad. You know, being responsible is a great characteristic. Being athletic is super healthy. And there's nothing inherently wrong with driving a truck. But it's the pressure that we put guys under to be in that space all the time that's the issue, because it's impossible to achieve. You know, we kind of put on this facade of like showing that we're in control and we're an emotional rock and we walk around like this, you know, and kind of show that, but it's impossible to maintain. And so when you're in this space as a guy and you feel like you can never quite reach that spot of attaining this sense of masculinity, if you can never quite get there, it's really easy to feel like, oh man, I've lost control, what's going on here? And when control is a huge piece of that red, obviously it's hard to think, okay, how do I get this sense of control back? And one easy way, or the quickest way often is, well, if I assert control over some of those others on the outside, then that's a quick fix. So when I first saw this exercise called the man box, I was at Colby College, and it was a hugely freeing experience for me. because I grew up playing soccer and I ski raced, and athletics was and is a huge part of my identity. So in many ways, I fit into this box of masculinity, but at the same time, I definitely was not your high school player. Like I was, well, first of all, I had that bowl cut and huge glasses until I was 16, no joke. I was super shy, I loved school, and I often felt more comfortable with my female friends. So when I first saw this exercise, I went, oh, that makes sense. I can be the fierce competitor that I am, and also the nice guy that I want to be. I can be the star athlete, but also sensitive and also emotional. I don't have to, conform to this constructed definition, and I can be both inside and outside that definition of what it means to be a guy in my life. So turning to, oops, skipped ahead, but that's all right. Turning to college, often your membership within this masculine box is often dictated by how much you can drink, the crazy stunts you can pull off when you're drunk, and how many girls you can have sex with. It's such a heteronormatively charged atmosphere. Like, think about the Sunday morning debrief sessions where guys share and embellish their stories of weekend exploits. Right? One guy tells a story, he's, oh, you're the man. Until somebody procures some story that's more absurd or more daring in some way, and suddenly that initial storyteller finds himself back under the microscope between the gap between being seen as the other and being the man. And as a freshman or first-year student, it's really easy, again, to think, all these other guys are having sex, all these crazy stories, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to be getting some, and I'm not. What's going on here? So, there's no question that guys can be and are victims of sexual violence, but the vast majority of perpetrators are male. Why is this? Well, so I think if we look at it from the perspective of a college guy, it's much easier to understand that there are three factors at stake here. First, you have that massive amount of anxiety that we talked about already, from being the pressure to be in that box all the time and feeling like you're losing control, but also this, oh, everyone else is having sex, but I'm not, what's going on? Then you have this sense of entitlement, again, accompanied by everyone else is having sex, it's almost like I'm expected to, but at the same time, guys never have to actually think about being victims of sexual violence because of their gender privilege. And then finally, you have this hierarchy starting between heterosexual men and women as a result of the words that we use to kind of push guys into that masculine box, but also the images that we see of women as sexual objects that permeate our entire media. So then if you think about that toxic recipe with a side of alcohol, for me, it becomes a little bit clearer about why this stuff might be happening. So how do we change this picture? And why do I feel that one key lies in working with college men, especially male athletes? Well, male athletes have a huge amount of social power on college campuses and also in our society in general. But often that social power is used in negative ways. Often again as a result of the pressures to confine to that definition. But most guys are not that type of guy. There's a small percentage of guys who are actively dictating those behaviors and perpetrating those behaviors. Most guys are in the middle of a spectrum between your guy who lives by that man box and the guy who's an openly male feminist leading the charge to end violence against women. Most guys are kind of in the middle, but they have a tendency to go this direction because of the social power that resides there. Right? But if we can conduct facilitated conversations with men who, that raise awareness of sexual violence, that unmask these pressures of masculinity, and that reveal gender privilege, we can amplify the healthy voices within men in the middle who would normally shift towards this end, towards a much healthier version where guys transcend the narrow confines of the quote-unquote real man, and where sexual assault is seen as a male issue and not just a female one. You know, if we amplify the healthy voices within men in the middle, who again normally would shift this way, we can isolate the perpetrators over here because suddenly their social power will have shifted to the guys who are exemplifying the leadership, the courage, and the empathy that are needed to expand outside of this masculine space. These are some great pictures of my friends in college amplifying the healthy voices. And so there's an inherent courage, accountability, and leadership within sport. And I strongly believe these characteristics are key to disrupting this culture of sexual violence in college. You know, as I ask student athletes, what would it take to extend the courage or the leadership and the accountability that's so natural to your sport to your larger community? You know, there's no question that guys are not the only ones who can exhibit these characteristics, and everything that I do is thanks to generations of amazingly courageous women who are much more courageous than I. But can you imagine if we could use the transformative power of sport that so many athletes, both male and female, identify with as a way to change the larger community around us? That, for me, is just so, that prospect is so incredibly exciting. So to finish, talking openly and emotionally about masculinity and sexual violence with men and boys already deviates from what we see as quote-unquote manly. You know, it already deviates from our expectations of male athletics. But I expect more. I expect that if we can conduct these type of conversations within guys, we can amplify the healthy voices within men to provide a counter-narrative to today's concept of the quote-unquote real man, thus freeing guys from this, you know, emotionally suffocating and anxious cloak of masculinity. And yes, I think that if these conversations became commonplace, we could prevent sexual assault in college. Thank you.